1,
2,
3,
4.
Monster movie.
Fun time, go! Monster movie.
Fun time, go. Monster
Movie.
fun time.
Go!
Monster movie. Fun time, go.
With Precious D and Honeybee.
Fun time, go!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends and neighbors, welcome to Monster Movie Fun Time Go. I am one of your hosts, Precious D.
And I'm the other one of your hosts, Honey B.
We just wrapped up our third annual 31 Days of Horror Marathon, and now we are back to our regular schedule just in time for Godzilla from 1998. And we have some special guests with us. Today we have from the podcast No Croissant, the Godzilla 98 story. That's right, a podcast devoted entirely to this movie. We have David Scrivani, Nick Huber, and Christopher Conde. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Fuck
Hello,
yeah,
hello.
welcome.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thanks for having us on. Hello, everybody.
Pleasure to be here.
And if you could all briefly introduce yourselves so the audience knows what voice goes with what name.
I'll go first. I'm the lead of this group.
You're the head honcho.
I'm the head. Hi, I'm Christopher Conde. Some people know me as Chicken Man. I've been a Godzilla fan for good 10-ish years maybe, and I run the No Croissant Godzilla podcast. It was a little stupid idea I had, and David and Nick wanted to help me with it. So
Hell yeah.
Okay, who's next?
don't worry.
I'll go, I guess. I was waiting for Nick, but it's, I guess
Oh,
it's my turn.
I wanted to let David go next. It's the last time I went second, so I wanted like David to have the second spot this round.
All right.
They do this shit on my show too, so.
Yeah, I know. It's bad. We never know who's going to talk. Anyways, I'm David Scrivani. I obviously am one of the co-hosts of the No Croissant podcast. I also host Talking Toku. It's more of a general monster podcast than Godzilla 98. But, you know, obviously Godzilla 98 is where my true passion lies. If you couldn't tell by our being here.
Okay.
And my name is Nick Huber. I'm the host of the Visionary Dawn podcast. My podcast that I do is we interview different people from film and different media. Recently, we had Tab Murphy on, who was also on our podcast. He wrote the Godzilla 98 sequel script that was never made. And I've been a big Godzilla fan all my life. And what I do on this podcast with David and Chris is I bring up a lot of different archived material from the 98 film, such as little trivia that didn't make it on the cutting room floor and other stuff from different production books and different memorabilia that I've collected over the years.
Yeah, I think there's a stereotype that like men in their 20s like all have their own podcast. That's all three of us. We all have our own podcasts.
It's true. For a long time, my co-host at Talking Toku, Brian, he had on his dating profile on Tinder, he had white guy with a podcast.
So it was really more of a warning than. Now, if this is your first time joining us on the show, Honeybee and I are two best friends who are making our way through the history of kaiju movies. We began with 1933's King Kong, and obviously today we have made it all the way up to 1998 with Godzilla from TriStar.
Yeah.
Let me give you the stats here. It's directed by Roland Emmerich. Screenplay by Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich. It is 139 minutes. It's in color. The budget was 130 to 150 million, and the box office was 379 million.
Ooh-wee.
And yet it's considered a flop, even a disaster. And they did not bother to make a sequel, except they did do a cartoon series that is a direct sequel to it. And have you guys all seen the cartoon?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I've seen every episode. I'm not sure about these guys here, but I will say just for some clarification, that cartoon was developed while the movie was still being produced. So I question whether or not they would have done it regardless if the movie was a success or
Right.
not.
Right.
Like as in continue it. But yeah, I mean, arguably the show is better than the movie. So.
Arguably.
I did want to add some clarification to the budget thing. So they did make all their money back on the movie. So it was financially a success. Where it bombed was critically, and then that's why we never got a sequel, because critically it was bad. But it made all of it.
Well, but there's been there have been plenty of bad movies that just keep churning out sequels.
I was gonna say, yeah, there's plenty of movies nowadays.
It underperformed financially. Although it did technically make its money back, it did not make. It wasn't the big Independence Day blockbuster hit that they were hoping for.
Right.
And we gotta keep in mind too that, like, and we've touched upon this on No Croissant, is how just the astronomical amount of money they spent on the marketing for that movie. The budget is probably double what it, maybe even more than double, so they probably only barely made its real budget back.
Before we get too far, I just want to say I've seen part of the cartoon. I don't think Honeybee's watched any of it yet, but if you want to, we're going to do another episode on that, so if you want to just stick around after we finish this one and just say a little bit about your thoughts on the cartoon, and then I will integrate that into our episode when we do it later.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and just to kind of let you guys know, if you haven't listened to the show, this was the first Godzilla movie to me, because I was born in 91, and I didn't give a shit about it when I was a kid or growing up at all. I had no idea, like, I just never watched it. I watched it for the first time, like, very, very recently, and so in all of these movies, all of the movies that we've watched, starting with King Kong, this is like really my first time. I never gave a shit about kaiju movies or really even knew what they were. It just was not something I was interested in. So I've only been a Godzilla fan for like the last 2 years. So this is all very, very new to me. The movie was very new to me. It was my first time ever watching it. So just so you guys know as well. And that is also why I haven't seen the cartoon yet, because we are going in order. So I haven't gotten there yet.
Well, welcome to the club.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Cool Kids Club.
So, am I the only one who saw this in the theater?
I certainly didn't.
I think Nick was alive.
I was alive,
but he didn't see it in the theater.
Chris, you were not alive, correct?
I was not alive. I was not even a mere idea. I wasn't even a single sperm cell at all. I didn't come into the scene for another 2 years, so.
Nice.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So I was 30 years old and living in New York when this came out.
Oh.
And you mentioned the advertising. I saw those buses with his foot on the side that said like his foot is the size of this bus. There were billboards everywhere. I had the Taco Villa cup holder, cup holder.
Taco Bell.
I think
Taco Bell.
Was it Taco Bell?
Yeah, it wasn't Taco
think
Bell, yeah.
Was there also a cup topper? Was there a different piece?
Yeah,
I might still have it somewhere. I'm not sure.
I know there's a water bottle that has like a strangely bizarre, like good sculpt, like way too good for like a novelty like water bottle to have of Godzilla on the top. There's the Taco Bell cup holder, and yeah, a lot of. I mean, I'm pretty sure there was a bunch of knickknacks from that movie that's like lost media at this point. Like, there's so much stuff like I have failed to see like properly documented anywhere. Like, I'm still like finding like new items and like merchandise and promo material I've never seen before.
I recently found out there was like a fishing rod and then like a mini pinball, like a portable pinball game, like you could carry around with you. It wasn't electronic or anything. It was just like these
A
plastic.
fishing rod so he could chase you down the dock when you're using
Yeah, I'm looking at this up right now.
I found on Facebook. I couldn't find it anywhere else on the internet, but I found a what's the ice cream brand?
It was Eddie's, right?
Eddie's. There is an official Eddie's. I think it was only for employees of some fucking place, but it was an official Eddie's ice cream Godzilla claw ice cream glove.
Oh.
Like for the people to scoop with.
Okay, well, if anyone wants that Godzilla fishing pole, you can get it on offerup.com, whatever the heck that is, for $80.
Oh, fantastic.
Nice.
Oof.
You trade with your kidneys on that one.
Wow. Well, I saw this on opening night somewhere in Manhattan on an IMAX screen.
Wow.
But
Oh my god.
they came out, well, the thing is they came out before the show to let us know that this was not actually an IMAX movie. They were just showing it on the IMAX screen. So we should have actually we would have been better off just getting a ticket to the regular screen.
Now, did they charge
it
you
wasn't-
IMAX rates?
I think they did. So it wasn't going to be in
They
3D.
ripped you off.
Bastards.
Yeah, it wasn't going to be on in 3D. It was just going to be on this weird curved screen that we had a strange angle to, and the place was packed. And they sent this poor girl out there to tell everybody, and we were all like, "What?" But it was too late.
Dominic, so you say you watched it in Manhattan. Were movie theaters in Manhattan back then as scummy as the ones now?
No, this was This was like this was a fairly new multi-story shiny multiplex thing.
Right. I mean, I know the economy was quite different than what it was in 1998 compared to now. But a movie ticket in Times Square is like $8.
Yeah, this was during during the period when they were kind of cleaning up Times Square. I don't think the theater itself was in Times Square, but there used to be a certain type of theater in Times Square that is not there anymore.
Yeah.
Wah, wah.
But there are a number of nice movie theaters in Manhattan, or at least there were at the time. They're probably all run down by now because it's years later.
Most things in Manhattan are, so.
Yeah. I haven't been there in a while. I have not been there in a while. So let's get to our cast. We have Matthew Broderick as Dr. Nick Tatopoulos, who is named after the guy that designed the creature. Jean Reno as Philippe Roche. Maria Patillo as Audrey Timmons. Hank Azaria as Victor Animal Pilati, our first Simpsons voice actor. Kevin Dunn as Colonel Hicks. Michael Lerner as Mayor Ebert. Harry Shearer, another Simpsons contributor, as Charles Kamen. Arabella Field as Lucy Pilati. Vicki Lewis as Dr. Elsie Chapman. Laurie Goldman as Jean. Doug Savant as Sergeant O'Neill. Malcolm Denari as Dr. Mendel Craven. Ralph Manza as Fisherman Joe. Glenn Morshower as Kyle Tarrington. Chris Ellis as General Hunter Anderson. Richard Grant, that's Richard Grant, not Richard E. Grant, as Admiral Phelps. Clyde Kusatsu as Japanese tanker skipper. Nancy Cartwright, our third Simpsons person, as Cayman's secretary. Frank Welker from Scooby-Doo fame as creature vocal effects. Gary A. Hecker also as creature vocal effects. And Kurt Carley as Godzilla, the suit performer who is uncredited.
the most overlooked actor in the film and arguably plays the most important character in the film.
Yeah. Not cool. Not okay, TriStar. Not okay.
We talked extensively about that on our show during his interview, but yeah, it's kind of an unfortunate reality that like a lot of faceless actors in film are often overlooked. I mean, besides like what's his name? Who can't believe his name's escaping me. The guy that played King Kong and Planet of the Apes.
Andy Serkis?
Andy Serkis, yeah. He's probably the most famous motion capture artist of all time.
Sure.
So
Yeah. So this might be a good time to mention that the Godzilla is a combination of CGI and some practical stuff and a guy in a suit. And
even
possibly
generous.
Some CGI over top of the guy in a suit. I think it all fits together pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't even like really tell. It's very hard to tell even in the movie when I think they only use. It's been a while since our Kurt Carley interview, but I think they basically cut most of the suitmation scenes, besides like a couple shots. He did tell us explicitly, anytime Godzilla is interacting with a physical object on the screen is basically me. And I don't know about you, but I cannot tell when that is.
Yeah.
There's a big tell towards the end where you can tell it's the animatronic Godzilla because it's like obviously a real object on screen. But other than that, like I mean, they hid the suitmation pretty well.
Yeah. Now, one of the critiques of this movie is that a great deal of it takes place at night in the rain, presumably to hide some of the CGI effects, and which was pretty common, I think, at that time. CGI has gotten better, and we can do things in the daylight now, but that was a pretty common practice back then.
I mean, to be honest, like sometimes the night scenes just look cooler and more dark and foreboding. For example, I mean, compare the Hong Kong battle in Pacific Rim to the final Tokyo battle in Pacific Rim Uprising. Like it's just like a night. I mean, sure, it's more complicated than just like having the setting at night.
Were you about to say it's like night and day?
Yeah, it's like night and day. But but I mean, still, like I think when it comes to things like kaiju films, what really sells the illusion that these monsters are as big as they are is not being able to see the entire monster in like one shot. You know what I mean? If a monster like that was real, the only time you'd ever see Godzilla like full body like head to tail is if you were like on a hill looking at him over like 100 feet, like 100,000 feet away. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's more realistic and sells the scale, I think, to the audience. The not have most of the monster like completely visible, which is why I do like night battles. With that being said, though, it absolutely had the doubling. It also doubled as like a way to hide the kind of like poor CGI. I mean, I know there was like also just like a time period limit. You know, obviously we've done so much better. Modern day CGI.
Now, I assume that you guys all enjoy this movie since you have this podcast.
Isn't that the question today?
I'll let Nick go first, because Nick probably loves this movie more than the three. Like out of all the three of us, I think Nick unironically enjoys this movie the most.
I enjoy it. I think it's a fun, like, albeit a little silly. I think it's a fun entry in the Godzilla like mythos. I think, because it takes a very interesting origin for Godzilla in the movie. So to add some historical context to it, the hydrogen test in the beginning of the movie was a real hydrogen bomb test. But what's interesting about it is that it was one of the very few that was an illegal hydrogen bomb test. So to explain, France basically showed up in Polynesia and said, okay, we're going to launch a hydrogen bomb right here, and there's nothing you're going to do to tell us no. We're just going to do it. And that's exactly what they did. They went to the Polynesian Islands, made a little base there, and they blew up a hydrogen bomb in 1963, which was the Morona bomb test. And that caused a huge mess from the UN after that happens, and that affects part of the plot of the movie. That's why the French guys are secretly like trying to move around the American military and, you know, cover up the tracks of Godzilla and from the public in the movie. And I thought that was a very interesting idea to like change the mythos so it's not the American Department of Defense that creates Godzilla, but is instead done with a different country. And then the other things I liked about it was that it's I think it was just a very like 90s movie. So it's got like a lot of the of a 90s movie mixed in with some minor elements of a Godzilla film that you would see like at the time.
So, Honeybee, this was your first time seeing the movie. What is your general impression? Did you enjoy it?
Well, so going into this movie, you know, I had heard a lot of people talk shit about it. And so I was kind of like not sure what I was going to think of the movie, especially just because a lot of people that I know just had so many complaints about like the design of Godzilla and all of these things, and I fucking loved it, man. I'm just like, fuck you guys. Like this movie is amazing, and I love the design of Godzilla in this movie. Like the meaner he gets, like just his design, like the definition, like he's just such a badass in this movie. And there's so many moments in this movie where I could like hear the critiques and like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, man, fuck you guys. This was so good. And I'm sad that I didn't see it sooner. The only complaint that I really have about this movie, and it's a complaint that I have about a lot of movies that we watch, is like the people shit. The people shit is kind of lame in this movie. Like the love story bullshit. I really felt like if I had seen this movie as a kid, I would have been like, oh, Audrey, I hope they get together. But then like seeing this movie now, I'm like, fuck this bitch. Like she is such an asshole. Like,
Audrey is a terrible person.
She's a terrible person, and it was like a very like Forrest Gump situation where when you see Forrest Gump as a kid, you're like, "Yay, Jenny! I hope they get together." But then when you see it as an adult, you're like, "What the fuck? Like, fuck her!" And
the
so,
Jenny comparison's perfect. Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm like, perfect, yeah. She. Usually in these movies, we have like a douchey guy, like a guy who's like kind of like, an asshole, but it was totally Audrey in this movie. So I know it was like, it's necessary in a sense. You got to have people shit to have the monster shit, and I get that. But that was really my only complaint about the movie was like the people shit was just kind of lame.
That was
like,
your
only
complaint?
Well, I mean, like, just... Yeah, I just thought it was so good. I loved it so much, and I'm like, give me more Godzilla.
Right.
So,
Chris,
yeah,
we gotta be fostering positivity here. We can't just be laughing at the fact that she liked the movie.
It is funny though. I mean, I do think. I mean, that's what I thought about the movie when I first saw it. I love the movie. It's just
I loved it.
I think it's pretty cool for what it is. I do agree that the main issue really is like everything to do with the human story.
Yes.
Which I guess is arguably can be everything. But I mean, like the monster is pretty cool though, and like if you're a kid watching this movie, like there's a reason why the kids love this movie more than the adults do. Like like you get to see a monster do cool shit.
Sure.
Like
totally.
So, for the record, I mostly enjoy it. There's an element that bugs the shit out of me, and we will get to that when we get to it.
And I did want to add a little context to my last statement when I was talking about the human characters from some Godzilla movies at the time. But what I like to the last Like the one that comes to mind is the last two Heisei Godzilla films, like versus Space Godzilla and versus Destroy. At least like the three characters that come to mind from those movies. But to explain what I mean is that like Space Godzilla was trying to do something where it had a little bit of comedy in there mixed with a science fiction plot and was going for something a little bit lighthearted, but there were also some characters in there that were douchebags, and that's what I was going for.
Sure.
98, the 98 film tries to do something a little bit similar, and Roland Emmerich in an interview actually revealed this, which was he got inspired by like older 50s movies and was trying to do character dynamics like that, but bring them towards the 90s. And ironically enough, the director of Space Godzilla was trying to do the same kind of thing, going with like this sci-fi melodrama, but bring it to what the times were, which was the 90s. And I will say this, that aside from a few characters in the 98 film, which I like, the rest of it was just a really miscasting, I think, and just a terrible script.
For sure. I agree. Like as soon as I saw like the main guy, Nick, what is the actor's name?
Matthew Broderick.
Yes. I was like, what?
Matthew Broderick?
This goofy dude. Like, I mean, cool. But, like, come on, man. And I don't know. It was just the people shit. Often I feel like that there's too much people shit. I need more monster shit. No more people shit. Give me more monsters. And I kind of just felt that way about this people shit. It's just like, boo.
I don't know. I mean, all right, so full disclosure, when I last watched the movie for its 25th anniversary, on the 25th anniversary, I did what I've been doing a lot with bad movies, in that I got stupidly stoned before watching it.
Fuck yeah.
And I don't know. I even the human stuff, it was kind of fascinating in a way. And like I mean, obviously I don't know how to explain it as a sober human being right now. But I don't know, it just, so for kaiju movies in general, for me, the human stuff is very important to me, because with a lot of films that focus too much on the monsters and not enough on the humans, they fall kind of flat, because you still need that level of humanity that you can relate back to really to fully immerse yourself in the story. And it just maybe it's because, you know, they're I hope this doesn't sound as bad as it is going to sound in my head, but maybe it's the fact that like they're actually speaking a language that I understand and am fluent in, that it's just shut up. I don't know, maybe it's just, it feels more, I don't want to say realistic, because that's going to sound even worse.
Well, look,
and
there's
that's
a reason
when
why
David got canceled.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was just digging myself a hole there.
I'll defend David. There's a reason why, I mean, studios even bother adapting certain properties and stories to specific audiences. I mean, for example, Disney. Did you know that there's like multiple versions of like Sweet Life of Zack and Cody and all these other shows just for like Indian? Yeah, and they're like filmed completely different actors. You know, basically the same stories. They're just adapted to different cultures and languages. I mean, did you know that there is a whole Hispanic or I think it might be Brazilian, I don't remember, but there's a whole Spanish version of Breaking Bad where they refilmed the entirety of Breaking Bad with different actors.
That I did know.
It's like it's so I think you're on to something. I mean I think I literally just saw a news report about it today. I think the newer generations are starting to like not care as much.
Right.
I mean, like Squid Games, despite being a foreign property, the story is something I think virtually anyone in a capitalist country can relate to. And because of that, it's like one of the most popular shows of Netflix like history.
Of course,
So,
we took the wrong lessons from that, and they're actually making a game show out of it. So you know, it doesn't always work.
Yeah, I know, but you understand my point. I don't think what you meant is problematic. It there's definitely some truth to it in the sense that we relate to. I mean, me and Nick were just talking the other day about how Cloverfield. We want to do a whole podcast on Cloverfield because Cloverfield is essentially a remake of Godzilla 1954, but built upon the 9/11 context instead of like Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Like you know what I mean? It happens, right? I mean, that's just like the whole history of art. We adapt to
For sure.
for other audiences.
Okay, guys, let's get into the plot. This is the summary from Wikipedia. Thank you, Wikipedia. And as I say, just jump in here anytime something strikes you. An iguana nest is exposed to the fallout of a military nuclear test in French Polynesia. In the South Pacific Ocean, a Japanese cannery vessel is suddenly attacked by a giant creature with only one fisherman surviving. Now, I appreciated this because it's a very traditional thing to do, to just start off with a ship getting wrecked by Godzilla.
Totally. I love that they like gave us little pieces. Like we didn't get just like, aha, Godzilla. We got like the tail and the claw and like how they just kind of eased us into it. I love that. It was so good.
Yeah, and I mean, like you pointed out, the whole ship scene is a direct, and this kind of is like what annoys me when people say that the movie had nothing to do with the original. It absolutely did. It did hit like certain some of the same beats from the original film. They both open with the shipping vessel being struck down by Godzilla. Yeah. So that's and you know, obviously that's goes back even further into Godzilla's origins with being inspired by the Lucky Dragon incident.
Yeah. Dr. Nico Niktatopoulos, an NRC scientist, is in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, so it's another very topical thing there, researching the effects of radiation on wildlife, specifically worms, because they call him the worm guy throughout the rest of the movie, but is interrupted by an official from the U.S. State Department. Meanwhile, in Tahiti, a mysterious Frenchman questions the traumatized survivor over what he witnessed, who repeatedly replies, Gojira. Nick is sent to Panama and Jamaica to study a trail of wreckage leading to another cannery ship with massive claw marks on it. Nick identifies skin samples he discovered in the shipwreck as belonging to an unknown species.
I really love when we see Nick in the footprint. Like, as soon as
that's just what I was about to bring up.
It kind of like pans out. I was like, yes, bring it. It's going to be so good. I was getting so hyped.
And not
like,
to go on another tangent,
where is it?
But that footprint's still there.
I was actually
to this day.
Really?
It's on its like last days out, I think. So if you do want to see it, I would go soon. But they do.
Where is that?
So it's in Hawaii. I don't recall which island. I don't know if Nick might know, but it's the same place they filmed Kong Skull Island in Jurassic Park. You can take a film tour there, and they'll bring you to the foot. It's mostly filled up by now, just due to you know, the weather of the years. But you can still see the faint outline of the Godzilla 98 foot still there to this day.
Wow.
That's so funny because one of my notes is like, this movie is kind of like a Godzilla movie and Jurassic Park had a baby.
It is
like,
that's
literally.
That's my main issue with the film, but
that was a lot of people's main issue.
Like I say, we'll get to that. Yeah. He dismisses the military's theory of the creature being a living dinosaur, instead deducing it to be a mutant created by nuclear testing. The creature travels to New York City, leaving a path of destruction in its wake. This is one of my favorite bits, and I feel like we saw a similar thing in another recent film, and both of them remind me of The Thing from Another World, when there's a fisherman on a dock and Godzilla comes swimming in and heads right to the dock, and the guy's got to run as the planks of the dock get flown up into the air behind him. There's a scene in the Thing from Another World where the thing is underneath some floorboards and it's in an Arctic outpost, and it's the same thing. As it moves, the floor gets destroyed as it moves underneath it.
Yeah. Or are you thinking
I
of
know
the
there's something
1982 movie?
where that also happens.
Yeah,
No, I'm talking about the original. They might also do it in the remake. I'm talking about The Thing from Another World, not The Thing, which is a remake of The Thing from Another World. They might also do it in the remake. But there is one of these kaiju movies we saw recently, I think, also did that. It's just a moment I really like. Anyway, the city is evacuated before the U.S. military, on Nick's advice, lure the creature into revealing itself with a large pile of fish.
The iconic pile of fish.
Yes.
The pile of fish.
Their attempt to kill it fails, however, and only causes further damage before it escapes. Nick collects a blood sample, and by performing a pregnancy test, which he just decides to do with some over-the-counter of the tests, discovers the creature reproduces asexually and so is collecting food for its offspring.
And that's when most of the audience was lost.
Yeah. Nick also meets up with his ex-girlfriend, Audrey Timmons. We saw a little bit of her already. We saw her we saw her at work, and she sees Nick on TV and realizes that's her in. A young aspiring news reporter. While she visits him, she uncovers a classified tape in his provisional military tent concerning the monster's origin and turns it over to the media like a sneaky little bitch. That's what it says right here in Wikipedia.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
Wikipedia's getting a little salty here. She hopes to have her report put on TV as to launch her career, but her boss, Charles Kamen, uses the tape in his report, declaring it his own discovery, and dubs the creature Godzilla. It's Gojira, you moron.
I think that's the name of our main... I almost said Talking Toku. Our main No Croissant group chat is Gojira, you moron.
It's on the back of your business card. One of you guys gave me a business card at G-Fest, and it's on the back of it at the top.
That's hilarious.
Chris, why have I not received a business card?
Oh, I thought I gave you one already. Well, I guess not.
They do the same thing in the Legendary movies, in that all the Japanese people call him Gojira, and the English speakers call him Godzilla. So I kind of appreciated that.
It's funny because when I went to Japan, they did a television segment about me going to the Godzilla zip line, and in the segment I kept calling it Godzilla, and I guess I was either saying it wrong or I don't know, but I was getting made fun of on Japanese Twitter, and they were like, we say fucking Godzilla, we don't fucking say Godzilla. Like, okay,
you stupid gaijin.
Were you maybe overpronouncing it?
Maybe, I don't know.
You're giving it too much.
It's pretty funny.
Look, this white dude coming to Japan.
You know, like the American, like the white newscaster who's like, there was a tornado today in Guadalajara. Like, dude, just calm down a little.
Breaking news: man pronounces Godzilla wrong.
Now I'm sure at that attraction they probably call it Godzilla a lot because it's for the tourists, so they want to make sure the Americans know where it is. As a result, Nick is removed from the operation, and it says here disowns Audrey. I'm not sure that's quite the right word, but yeah, fuck Audrey. Before being kidnapped, I'm writing you out of my will, Audrey. You are no ex-girlfriend of mine. Before being kidnapped by the mysterious Frenchman Philippe Roche, revealing himself. So we've seen him a couple times so far, claiming to be an insurance agent. but he reveals himself as an agent of the French Secret Service. We get some, I want to mention, we get some stuff with him in a surveillance van. And when his assistant brings him some coffee, he's like, where's the croissant? And they say, no croissant.
And that is where we get our name.
Is where the title of your podcast. Yes.
It all comes full circle.
Which is I think, genius marketing. Who would not know that a podcast called No Croissant is about Godzilla 98? So he's in the French Secret Service, and he explains that he and his colleagues have been closely watching the events to cover up their country's role in the nuclear testing that created Godzilla. Suspecting a nest somewhere in the city, they cooperate with Nick to trace and destroy it. Meanwhile, Godzilla resurfaces and dives into the Hudson River to evade the second attempt by the military to kill it, where it is attacked by Navy submarines. After colliding with torpedoes, Godzilla sinks, believed to be dead by the authorities, and that's the end of the movie. Except it's not.
Wouldn't that
because
be nice?
then we get, ladies and gentlemen, Jurassic Park, which is, as indicated earlier, my main problem with the movie is just the blatant ripoff of Jurassic Park raptors that we now spend most of the rest of the movie dealing with. Yeah, I even at the time, I just was like, what is this bullshit?
I'm not entirely opposed to the idea of it. It's just at this point, the movie is starting to feel very long. It's because it's like 2.5 hours long. I think to this day, it's still the longest. It's still the longest Godzilla film in the franchise at 2.5 hours. I think the other one, like the closest, is like probably King of the Monsters, which is like 2 hours and 10 minutes, I think. So it's still not even close.
I definitely wanted to second that. The pacing feels like it slows down. Like it looks like it starts going really smooth going in, and then around when you get to the baby Godzillas, it kind of slows down. To add something else to that, though, with the Jurassic Park comparison, when I think about it more, it's what else would we get with it, though, is the thing. Like what I'm saying is with the baby Godzillas, because they're just smaller versions of the adult, I almost feel like it was inevitable that you were going to end up with something that seems like, like the Raptors, because, you shrink the full grown Godzilla to human size, it's just a dinosaur running around. So like that's, I almost feel like that comparison was always going to happen anyway. So.
Well, but I think the only reason that is an element of the story is because they wanted to do that. They wanted to rip off Jurassic Park, and they're like, well, we've got the big T-Rex kind of thing. Let's get some of those raptors in here. I know. It's pregnant. It's going to have a nest. Yeah, that's it. That'll be our third act. I don't think, that it had to be a movie about a pregnant Godzilla. I think they just wanted to have some little raptors running around.
All right, so here's my question for you then. Would it have been better if it had been a more traditional baby Godzilla design, like something like Manila?
Yeah, you wanted it to look like a baked potato?
I just wouldn't have had them in the story. I wouldn't have had them be part of the story.
But would it have been improved if it would look more like Manila?
No, absolutely not. It would have just been a different reason to dislike it. It wouldn't have been a Jurassic Park ripoff, but it would have been Manila. So there's that.
I liked,
maybe if it looked more like Godzuki.
Aww. Okay. I liked the baby raptor type Godzilla things. I loved it. I liked that they were like kind of chill at first, and they were like, "Don't move, don't panic," and then they were like, "Nah, run!" And then we had the like goofy Scooby Doo moments.
Now
where
panic.
they were like, marbles on the floor, or what? Or they were gumballs, all
it
that.
It does
like,
feel
shit.
very Scooby Doo, actually.
It does.
It
well,
really does.
It's got Frank Welker. Frank
That's
Welker's
true.
in it, so there you go. There you go.
Like Zoink Scooby Godzilla's.
Nick and Philippe's team, followed by Audrey and her cameraman Victor Animal Pilati, find the nest inside Madison Square Garden with over 200 eggs. Before long, the eggs begin to hatch, and the strike team are attacked by the offspring. Nick, Animal, Audrey, and Philippe take refuge in the garden's broadcast booth and successfully send out a live news report to alert the military.
Oh, did you get your live news report, Audrey? Oh, did you finally get it? Jesus fucking Christ, man.
Yeah, well, she might have to sacrifice her life for it. She's certainly willing to. She's like, you guys need to bomb this shit right now. We'll try to get out, but we might not.
I finally got my live
Just
broadcast.
do it. Yeah, so I can die happy now. Please bomb me. I did kind of appreciate that moment where she's just like, you need to destroy this place now. Then don't worry about us. Just do it.
You need to destroy the worst character.
Yes. A prompt response involving an airstrike is initiated as the four escape moments before the Air Force bomb the arena. Audrey and Nick reconcile, boo, before the adult Godzilla, having survived, yay, emerges from the garden's ruins.
Surprise, shouty!
Enraged by the deaths of its brood, it takes its rage out on the four because it knows they're responsible, chasing them across Manhattan. After a taxi chase, they manage to trap Godzilla within the cables of the Brooklyn Bridge, allowing the returning Air Force to shoot it. Godzilla dies from its mortal wounds, and the remaining citizens and authorities celebrate. Audrey tells Kamen that she quits working for him after what he has done before leaving with Nick. Philippe, taking a tape Animal was recording and promising to return it after removing certain contents, thanks Nick for his help and parts ways. Meanwhile, in the ruins of Madison Square Garden, a single surviving egg hatches, and the hatchling roars. Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
I do want to mention Mayor Ebert and his assistant, Gene, which some of the younger viewers may not realize what's going on there. Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert were famous film critics who sadly are no longer with us, but they had a number of television shows and a number of bad reviews for Roland Emmerich movies. So, like a little crybaby, he put them in the movie to make fun of them. Yeah. And in Ebert's review of this movie, which is not good, he mentions it and doesn't complain about it. He actually just says that I thought we got off a little bit light. I expected to get killed by Godzilla.
Yeah, I mean that's the weird thing. Like the fact that they survived is interesting, considering that they were put in there to be made fun of.
Yeah,
right. But I think it seems like Roger was a good sport about it and gave it a bad review, but not because of that. And I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and think that it is an honest bad review, that he doesn't. That probably amused him a little bit.
If it was me, I would have been like honored. He was concerned personally.
Yeah. So there we go, folks. That is the plot to Godzilla 1998. Any other parts?
One of the movies of all time.
Wants to? Yeah, one of the.
I
movies,
agree.
Yes. Of all the movies, this is one of them.
So I've I'll add another little just general thought about it. If that's where we're going, I don't know where we're going after this.
Yeah.
So I've kind of come to the realization that at least for me personally, like I think the fandom as a whole they're starting to get there, but it's going to take a little more time because Godzilla fans are a stubborn bunch. They can be. But I think this film 25 years on is starting to get to the point that for a lot of people, the Star Wars prequel trilogy is at, in that you
God
can
damn
kind of
it.
joke about it, and like also the people who watched it as kids are starting. They're kind of getting the nostalgia for it. Like that's kind of where I am. Like I can make fun of it,
Yeah.
but I still have that nostalgia
Yeah.
for it because I watched it a lot as a kid because it was, it was widely available. It was one of the few that were widely available at the time. And yeah, you can make the argument of whether it's like, oh, you're just enjoying it ironically. It's like, but you're still enjoying it. There's still that level. You're still enjoying a movie
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you know?
There are people who this was their first Godzilla movie, and they probably watched it over and over again as a child, and that's fine. That's, it's good for them that they can enjoy it on that level.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly don't hate it. I don't hate it.
Neither do I. Yeah, no,
Don't hate it
that's. But again, like, I feel like something like That's a Lot of Fish has the same. It's like at the same level as like any of the meme worthy lines in like Revenge of the Sith. It's at that level. I feel.
I don't know what you're talking about. I know George Lucas intended to do some prequels to Star Wars, and that would have been cool if he had done that. But apparently, because I read in a Starlog magazine years ago that he was going to make 3 prequels and 3 sequels, but then he got busy making Willow and whatnot, and never got around to it, and that is a darn shame. So.
Sure, they would have been amazing.
Are there any? I mean, the whole idea of a war over the issue of cloning, and clone rights. To me, I always found that fascinating. Like, tell me more about this clone war.
I'm just curious as to how far you can take this at this point.
Judas Priest. And surely there wouldn't be anything in there about the Jedi being okay with slavery. That wouldn't make any sense. Is there anything else that we have failed to mention that anybody wants to bring up?
I will say that there were some things in this movie that gave me all the feels, like the disposable cameras, the cell phones.
Yeah, sure.
Like all of the very like 90s shit that, I was just like, oh man, like that was kind of nostalgic for me, even though I hadn't seen this movie. And also because I hadn't seen this movie and because I didn't really have, I just like didn't really know what to expect, but because I had heard so many bad things about it, I think that it made it so much better for me because I was like, man, I don't really see the bad things as much as I think people who were like true fans who watched this movie and then were like, oh, fuck that movie. I didn't really get a lot of that. And also, it kind of reminds me of, there was a guy that we recently did an interview with, and he was saying, like the reason why Godzilla has made it this far and why it's such a big deal is because Godzilla is a concept and because it changes all of the time, and the way that it changes throughout time. Yeah, it was Bob, you're right. Yeah, the way that he changes throughout time is kind of like what keeps him relevant and like why it's so good and why it's so big. And I really felt that in this movie because he's so different in this movie, not only because like of the CGI and stuff, but just kind of even like he has this moment when he first kind of like gets close to Nick sort of in the beginning where it's just kind of like a puppy moment, like a dog moment, like he's just an animal and he's just like sniffing shit out, and it's just like such a cool moment that I feel like we haven't really got in the previous films, where he's just like, I don't know, it's just this really cool thing. So I think that this film kind of really was that for me, was like the evolution of like, where we are now with this like Godzilla versus Kong and all of this like the legendary Godzilla is so big and scary and raw, and this is kind of like the first like little bit of that, because it's not like a dude in a heavy rubber suit like goofing off and doing weird shit. So I just really loved that, like that we really got to see this crazy evolution from, like Destroya and Space Godzilla to this kind of like just purely instinctual animal, just doing animal shit and destroying shit. And like, I loved it. I loved it so much. I'm happy to be in 98 because, man, some of the movies, in like the 50s, like 54 Godzilla, and even like, just going through those, especially because I hadn't seen them or really watched a lot of old movies, I'm like, for fuck's sake, like, what is like, this movie is just not very good. So to watch a movie from like, 98, where like I'm starting to really like watch movies and get into it, it was kind of nostalgic for me in that way of just like the quality, but also I just love the evolution of Godzilla up to this point, and I loved it, man. I loved it. I will watch it again, and I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, and on that note, I was going to add that I feel like it's aged better than 2014 has, like as far as pacing goes. In fact, James Rolfe recently even admitted this when he was talking about after seeing the 2014 movie on opening night. He said, I don't understand it, but going back and watching it, I felt like I enjoyed the way that they paced the 98 film better than the 2014 one. And like it just, like he felt like he got more of his enjoyments out of that.
Hell yeah.
Which was interesting, but I can kind of see why a little bit, like on some elements, like again, like the helicopter chase is a lot of fun. I'm not gonna lie.
It's so
one of
good.
my favorite scenes in the whole movie, and probably one of my favorites, like in the Godzilla series, actually happens in the '98 film. It's the submarine chase, and I'll tell you why. It's because instead of normally what you see when Godzilla attacks submarines, like he just gets hit, he takes a sub down, and then that's kind of the end of it. They paced it out where he goes towards the subs, and then the torpedoes that are following him, he rearranges back into the subs, and I thought that was brilliant. Like he so actively knows torpedoes are coming after him, but instead he just redirects the torpedoes back towards the submarines by going underneath them. I was like, why didn't they do that in a Toho film? Like, I love that they did that. Like, they tried to make Godzilla smart, like, in that, which I thought was clever. Like, I thought that was really smart and like cool. Like, I wish like we had more like underwater battle scenes of the military like attacking Godzilla. Like I thought that would be like just something Toho should look into in the future. Because other than like a brief shot in Tokyo SOS in 2003, that's all we got. Like everything else is above water, but there's never anything like that, which was like really like mind blowing at the time. And it still has aged very well. I think the submarine chase and the little thing they did outside Central Park where the military is attacking them. A really interesting thing I wanted to add to that too is that so when he jumps into the Hudson River during that whole shot, like you know what I'm talking about, where he charges down that block and then he jumps in the river. All the artillery tanks on the ground land shots at him, but it doesn't do anything to him. But then the Air Force, when they attack him, it kills him. Like it blows like chunks of his like neck and chest off, and then he dies. Supposedly Roland got the idea from the first Godzilla movie, because in the 54 film, the jets that come after him when he goes into Tokyo Bay, they never land a single hit on him, but everything on the ground from the tanks and the artillery trucks hit him. So supposedly that might have been where he got the idea of, well, I've never seen the Air Force land a hit on the first Godzilla, so I'm going to have the jets kill him, because I don't see anything in this movie where the missiles ever land a hit. So and going back to when he was planning it, like the only movie he took into like real consideration and detail when he was writing the script, he said was the original Godzilla movie. Like that was it. He ignored everything after it. So I've always assumed from him saying that he just ignored like everything else that came after, and it was just like, well, I'm going to use that little loophole as an excuse for the military to kill him, I guess. And that's where I'm assuming he got that idea. But rearranging this background to the overall topic, I look at the movie like a nostalgic art piece, but also a really good, cool entry in the Godzilla series. Like it's not perfect. It's goofy. It's silly, but it's fun. And like that's what a movie should be. You know what I mean? Like if you're not having fun with the movie, then why are you watching it? It's
Totally.
I wish there were some things they could have done a little better. I'm not going to lie, because there's a lot of stuff that I think could have been tons better than what we got. And there's a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor that never made it to the final movie, which would have helped it a little bit, especially if the opening, which we could talk about that later. I wish that, I wish more people will come back to it and check it out. And then, as this new 90s wave nostalgia starts to take on, because now everyone's getting sick of the 80s. Everyone's getting more into the 90s now. I think more fans will, kind of warm up to it and, look at it for what it is. Like, it's not a perfect movie. It's not Citizen Kane. It's not the first Godzilla movie, but it's a fun, silly take on Godzilla, I think.
Well, since you brought up Toho, I feel I should mention that the perceived failure of this movie led Toho to get off their butts and start putting out more Godzilla movies, which they did the very next year. They called it Godzilla 2000, but it came out in 1999, and it actually got an American release. And that led to a whole new series of what is called the Millennium films. And this version of Godzilla appears in one of those. They've renamed him Zilla, although I don't know if anyone actually says it on screen. And they make a joke about it. It's Final Wars, which basically has almost every creature in it. And there's a little scene where these two guys are looking at the video, and one of them says, "Is that Godzilla?" And another one says, "In America they say so, but no, it's not."
I'm trying to remember
so
now.
He is now officially part.
I believe that's GMK you're thinking of.
Yeah, it's GMK.
Not to be like actually, but yeah, that was in GMK.
It's not Final Wars.
Push up his glasses.
But Zilla did appear in. Obviously, you are right that Zilla appeared in Final Wars just to be killed. He's kind of referenced as like a joke in GMK, that scene you were just describing, but it was more like a diss than something to seriously take as canon. Yeah. But I guess you can think of 98 as canon as GMK. So
if you want the full GMK universe wash through, you gotta include 98 Godzilla.
Yeah,
of course.
98.
Yeah. All right, let's go around the horn here and get everybody's rating. We use a 5-star scale on this show.
So what are we doing it out of again?
5. So 1 star is I hated it. 2 is I didn't like it. 3 is it was okay. 4 is I liked it, and 5 is I loved it. And this is just, your feelings about it. David, why don't you go first?
I'll go first. 2 stars.
Okay.
That's pretty harsh, don't you
Nick,
think?
how many do you give it?
I'm gonna give it a 4.
That's okay. Okay. And Chris?
I'm gonna go in somewhere in between. I think it's is a 3 too high? It's a good movie. I'll say it's a good movie. I think it's definitely overhated. It's not a great movie. But especially looking back on the nostalgia glasses, it kind of has the same pseudo ironic enjoyment. I think the newer generation gets out of the prequel movies, or at least the what I imagine the prequel movies would be like had they come out. But don't look at it at an overly critical lens. It's just a fun little summer blockbuster film from a time where it was a little bit more appropriate to destroy New York, and it was an interesting American adaptation of a Japanese classic.
This movie can never be made today.
Well, that's gonna dive. I do want to expand on that when I eventually talk about Cloverfield on a podcast, because that's there's some strings you can tie together with Cloverfield and Godzilla '98. I'm sure. I couldn't tell you what,
Okay.
but I'll find those similarities. It's
well, I'll hit you up when we get to Cloverfield.
Sure thing.
When we get to Cloverfield.
I have a lot of interesting.
I'm still not hearing a hard number.
Well, it's an interesting thing to say. I mean, I don't want to get too depressing here, but you know, Godzilla '98's pre 9/11 movie, Cloverfield's a post 9/11 movie, and you can see the obvious influences. I mean, even Godzilla '98 directly references the '93 World Trade Center bombing. Which is, so it's like literally like, you know, the idea of like terrorism and that fear was like in their minds when they're even like creating that movie. So it's it's just a interesting. It's not really like a deep analysis. It's more just like a. It says more about like the culture back then, and how we perceive entertainment now versus in 1998. When things were just a tiny bit more innocent.
Still not hearing a number, Chris.
Come on, Chris. You know you want to give it that extra star. Go for 4.
5 stars. 5 stars.
I think you can give it like a 3.5.
I think a 3.1 is a perfectly fine number.
0.1.
Okay.
That's cheating.
Okay. Nick, did you give it 1? What did you say?
Mine was 4 stars.
Yours was 4. Okay, yes.
A little high.
Honeybee, what are you gonna give it?
I'm giving it 5 stars. I loved it. I had
Let's
so much
go.
fun
Okay.
watching it. It's 5 stars for me all the way.
Okay, I'm giving it a 3. I think it was okay.
Wait, hold on, Honeybee.
Don't love it.
But wait, how are you giving it 5 stars with your you so vitriolically hated Audrey?
Yeah, well, if we were rating Audrey, it'd be a different story. But I definitely feel like it was 5 stars for me. And you know, like I feel like she contributed to the movie a little bit in a way. Whatever.
Every movie needs a villain.
Yeah.
Every movie needs a villain, and Godzilla is clearly not the villain in this.
Yeah,
'Cause he's just
the
a
real
villain.
monster
Very
is
true.
fucking Audrey, and we all
Very,
know
very
it.
true.
Blonde reporter.
I will say 5 stars is wild. 5 stars to me personally is reserved for like very particular movies, like I don't know, like Schindler's List and like
And the Star Wars prequels.
what's another amazing movie? Oh,
Hey,
okay, fine. I'm sorry.
this
the
is
Phantom
just
Menace. But it's interesting
just
though,
her
'cause
personal feelings.
well, it's awesome because I think one thing, and the reason why I kind of hate like film snobs, like I love so many bad movies, or at least movies that are the general public perceive as bad. Like, hey, like I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy a scene or two from the Dragon Ball Evolution film. It's people.
Interesting approach.
The wonderful thing about art and the people of this world is that we all perceive art differently and uniquely from each other, and sure, maybe most people didn't like Godzilla '98, but the fact that everyone in this call, we all enjoy this movie, so it's. Meanwhile, some people will like literally send you death threats if you say you like it. So
yes.
We saw a whole panel at G-Fest. It was a guy who loved it, a guy who hated it, and a guy who thought it was just eh. There was a guy in the audience who seemed angry. He got up to give a comment when it was time for that, and we couldn't even understand what he was saying. Because he was just
seething with rage.
It sounded like he was saying something to the effect of, "How dare you sit there and say that this is a good movie?"
All right, here's the thing, though.
That seemed to be the general tone, but we couldn't make out his words.
This movie is now 25 years old. It is a quarter of a century old. Just fucking get over it at this point. Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's so exhausting
I
now.
would say it.
Fight me in the street.
This guy was like you had. It was like you had insulted his mother. Like you had made an entire movie dedicated to insulting his mother. Personally, that was his level of anger.
God.
Oh my goodness. Well, David Scrivani, Nick Huber, and Christopher Conde, thank you for joining us.
Thank you
Here
guys.
today.
It is our pleasure. We're glad to join. We all had a lot of fun, and we're pretty excited to join in. I mean, this is the first time someone's asked us to be the guest.
I know.
We'll feel like little celebrities today.
It doesn't look like it's streaming anywhere for free, but you can buy or rent it on all the main places like Vudu and Amazon and YouTube and Google if you are so inclined.
I'm sure Footlocker has a copy somewhere that you can find. I'm sure 123 Movies might have a copy.
You can go surfing on the bay.
I believe there's a 4K version coming out soon if it's not out already.
Yeah, we're getting a new Steelbook 4K for the 25th anniversary.
Oh
yeah,
I'll be first in line for that one.
Because
I'll be camping overnight. You don't want the scalp.
Godzilla 98 is one of the few Godzilla movies I don't own on Blu-ray.
It
I may as well.
One of the Godzilla movies. Just one.
I have a DVD.
Just one of them.
I have a digital copy that's a Blu-ray level, but I don't have my physical copy is just a DVD.
Yeah, same here.
Next week we'll be talking about Godzilla the series, and we'll have these guys on briefly to give us a few thoughts on that. But I think for now that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you all for joining us. We'll put links on our website to all of these guys' other projects and podcasts and things. You can find all of that at mmftg.com, and you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/mmftg, where we give early release, no ads episodes, and we do some Patreon exclusive episodes. We are still making our way through the lyrics to science fiction double feature from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So join us here next week. Until then, I have been Precious D.
And I have been Honey Bee.
Remember to keep calm and take shelter in basements.
And please don't misuse science.
We won't see you, but you will hear us next time on Monster Movie Fun Time Go. You've been listening to Monster Movie Fun Time Go. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on your podcasting platform of choice. Our theme song is by the Texacato Folk Rock Punk featuring Lita Lopez. You can support the show, find links to our social media, and even leave us a voice message at anchor.fm/mmftg.